So I want to talk a little bit about what the mainstream media, Fox News, the Israeli government, United States government keeps screaming. I guess they think it's okay that bomb civilians, churches, schools, hospitals, whether you like it or not, they bomb hospitals.
War is not pretty.
Sorry, Judge Janine.
Pause that. War is bloody.
Yes.
I wish it was different.
Casualties.
You know, I wish it was different.
Casualties.
But war is
I
rough.
think they've said they've gotten one or two. They've announced one or two Hamas commanders since it started. One or two.
Aren't the main ones in Qatar right now anyway, by the way?
Well, they have an office in Qatar, and I think that's more of their political.
Al-Qassam ones are in.
They're in underground.
Okay.
Deep down underground. And every single time that Israel's starting to go in there, we're seeing new videos emerge of them getting hit by, handheld rockets. They just pop out of these tunnels out in the middle of nowhere, and boom. Like I said, Israel's not ready for this. And they're going to start and continue to lose troops. We even saw this small drone drop like a little bomb, right, and hit all these little hit these troops. They're not ready for this. This is going to be something interesting. It's a different day. I believe, I don't know if you've talked to Douglas McGregor, but he talked about it. The whole region's different. The whole fighting scenario is different. It's a different situation.
Ben Shapiro said he's wrong. Douglas McGregor's wrong. I'm sorry.
I know, it's okay. Let's take a look at this. George, I want you to take a look at this because this is back in the days. Even when Pat Buchanan, hardcore right-wing Pat Buchanan is even saying, no, what's going on? I mean, this is a little lopsided.
Well, Pat Buchanan was the one hardcore right-wing guy that wasn't very pro-Israel. And I remember the description. Now, I don't remember it. I was young when he was around.
Yeah.
But I remember like the joke about him, the Al Franken joke was he can always find a nice thing to say about Hitler.
Yeah.
Was that true? Like, is that his? He seemed like a weird Catholic.
It was unfair. It was an unfair characterization. But that was true. There were a lot of hit jobs done on Pat Buchanan back in the day.
Yeah. Him and his sister. Let's take a look at this because this is interesting. This is Press TV. Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan on the same page, and I think it lends a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? But I mean, the way a lot of people are saying this is very lopsided. I made a tweet once before saying that slaves don't attack, they revolt, and what they're dealing with, Hamas, this is really ridiculous to say that they can wipe out Israel. Take a listen to this.
Republican Congressman Ron Paul recently called the onslaught in Gaza an atrocious massacre.
It's our money and our weapons, but I think we encouraged it. Certainly the president has said nothing to diminish it. Matter of fact, he justifies it on moral grounds. They have a right to this without ever mentioning the tragedy of Gaza. The real problems that are there. To me, I look at it like a concentration camp and people are making homemade bombs and like they're the aggressors.
The Israelis have been hit for 6 months with these little rockets, which didn't kill anybody. It was outrageous, cruel, and stupid, and they triggered a blitzkrieg against the Palestinians in Gaza, which in my judgment is an Israeli concentration camp where 1.5 million people are locked up, cannot come out or go in. They've been controlling food, electricity, fuel, and the innocent people in Gaza are the ones suffering.
Concentration camp, Pat, doesn't that diminish the significance of the real concentration camps?
No, I'm not talking about a death camp. I'm talking about what the British had in concentration camps in South Africa and what the Spanish had in Cuba and what others have had where they bring all these people, lock them in there and treat them with great cruelty and a humanitarian disaster, despite what Zippy Livni says.
I told you, dude, right? Last time I was on a podcast talking about this, and Norman Finkelstein is the one who called it a concentration camp.
Yeah.
I've been saying that whenever there's a debate about it, and what that guy just said, nobody says that. They don't deny it's a concentration camp.
No, they don't. George, your thoughts on this right now? Because I think there's, in some situations, the government and the Israeli government, that is, wants to separate Hamas from the Palestinians to justify the carpet bombing, the Dahaya doctrine, which is an actual doctrine in which they can use to mow the lawn, carpet bomb, because they're saying they're
separate. I thought they're trying to glom them together.
No, well, the Israeli government says when they're attacking, and the United States media and government goes Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. This is not about the Palestinians; it's about Hamas. But then you have a lot of people.
There's no civilians.
Then they'll say, well, you'll have a lot of civilians going, like, people like Jesse Waters and other people. Well, they're the same. These Palestinians are sympathetic to Hamas. They voted for Hamas, so they deserve the same treatment. But this is very lopsided. It was lopsided back then. It's lopsided today. What are your thoughts on this and how that relates to what's going on today?
Well, that's the thing, that Gaza is essentially occupied territory. So if it's occupied territory, Israel really has no right to self-defense, because Israel has taken over territory that it was ordered by the United Nations many, many years ago and repeatedly to give up. So what the people like Jesse Waters are suggesting is clearly a war crime. So anytime you start hitting a civilian population in order to hurt the political leadership, in order to persuade them to get rid of the political leaders, that is a war crime. That is, without, under the Geneva Convention and the protocols, additional
collective
to the
punishment,
without question, those are war crimes. And so, that what Israel has done, again, it's very, very good at public relations, is to present themselves, well, we are the victims. Oh, we're poor little us. We are being picked on by Hamas. But of course, there's no comparison. I mean, Israel is regionally a military superpower. Israel has nuclear weapons. Hamas doesn't have any of those things. All right, so when Pat Buchanan did that, he said they were just sending these firecrackers. I think, all right, they have something more than firecrackers now, but it's still nothing in comparison with Israel. It is Israel that is subjugating these people. These people are not subjugating Israel. So what Israel does is, on the one hand, 1967, we can take on everybody. We're so strong. We're so powerful. Oh, and poor little us, we're being picked on. We're wearing the yellow stars. It's Jews in Berlin, 1936, all over again. Yeah. We can't even walk down the street without some, Nazi yob.
They feel uncomfortable on college campuses, George.
Right.
They feel,
exactly. But that was the Israeli representative at the United Nations. So the guy representing this regional superpower wearing a yellow star, and with never again, as if somehow, there's some kind of comparison between Hamas and the Nazis, who presided over the greatest military power in the world at that time, and had all the powers of the state, and so we're facing the same threat. It's a total fraud, but it works in the U.S. Media space, because Fox News just completely regurgitates this stuff. And 1 minute Israel is the superpower, next minute it's they're being picked on by these nasty Hamas people, and that's how they do this. But the fact is that Hamas has the right to self-defense. Now, if they commit war crimes in their self-defense, I mean, if during October the 7th raid they committed war crimes, and it suggests that they did, then they are responsible for those war crimes. But the act of defiance against an occupying power, that in itself, that's not a crime. They had every reason to defy the occupying power. And so therefore to suggest that somehow this was an attack on Israel, well, it wasn't an attack on Israel. It was Israel is the occupying power. So therefore it was a completely deliberate misreading of international law.
I made that tweet before. I said slaves don't attack; they revolt.
Okay, I have a problem you saying slaves, because slaves do not have 60% unemployment. I've never heard of slaves that don't have any work.
It's
not slaves. It's prisoners
prisoners. All right, prisoners don't.
It's not like
prisoners don't attack. They revolt. It still works.
To even say it's revolt, it's like it's all these civilians there, and there's one group. I've never heard of, like, let's say slavery in America, the Nat Turner Rebellion. I didn't know slave owners were secretly funding that to create like Netanyahu is funding them.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me that can even be glossed
and that's
over.
why it's nuts when people.
Oh, is Hamas bad? I agree. Yeah. Why were you paying them?
You want to eliminate Hamas? The first thing, stop funding them. Right? It's just like any radical group, from the Mujahideen that the United States has funded to the Contras in Latin America. Let's talk about that really quick when it comes to Hamas, because obviously I'm not justifying what they did, but what do you make of the fact that the Israeli government, the United States media, tries to make what Hamas did on October 7th something different, more barbaric, more disgusting than whatever Israel's ever done, when you simply just look at the numbers, and it's so disproportionate.
I don't look at the numbers.
But if you do, we have looked at the numbers.
Feelings care about facts for me right now.
Okay. The numbers are ridiculous over here. I think up until this situation happened from 2008 to 2020, right? I think it was somewhere along the lines of 5,500 Palestinians killed to 250 Israelis killed. What are your thoughts, and how long can they keep it going on? It seems like it's losing momentum. It looks like memes are kicking this kind of theory's ass. Where you see that? Hold on a second. You see the meme where a lady's laying down, a Palestinian with her baby, and you have all these microphones going, "Do you condemn Hamas?" And you got all the mainstream media and whatnot. They're losing the narrative right now. But do you have something to say?
It's not a matter of are you justifying Hamas? No, I never called them freedom fighting, none of that stuff. You know who's going to justify Hamas? The IDF, by carpet bombing civilians. Not to me. They're going to kill more than the original unjustified attack. If you're going to outnumber them, outscore them in kills of civilians, you're going to do that. And when I say justified, I don't mean I'm going to think that. I mean all the people in that area are going to go, "Oh, it's good that I'm glad they at least killed civilians because you killed so many of us." So we have nothing to do with anybody here justifying anything. The actions they do right now, and they're going to, now it's going to be PR of, well, Dresden and Nagasaki and Hiroshima were good.
The call for the ceasefire, did we tell, my BB voice, did you tell the United States not to, after Pearl Harbor, to have a ceasefire? I didn't think so. George, your thoughts on this whole Hamas narrative that seems to be crumbling right before their eyes?
Right, no, that's right. And it's very interesting, what you just said about this Israeli propaganda line about, well, look at what you did in World War II. Now, the examples that he cites, which is Dresden, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and then this bombing in Copenhagen, in which they were trying to hit, the British were trying to hit a Gestapo headquarters, but instead they hit a children's school, and 84 children were killed. These are all events that are a source of great embarrassment for the Western powers. Now, the Western powers absolved themselves at Nuremberg. They didn't put any of their people on trial, but all of these things were horrific events because they were all essentially either targeting civilians, as obviously Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Dresden were exclusively targeting civilians, massive loss of life. And then in the case of this children's hospital or children's school, they just acted recklessly without any possible justification, because Gestapo headquarters, who cares? This was 2 months before VE Day. So it's fascinating that Israel should try to use this, the idea of killing children, as justification for what they're doing today. But I agree with you that they're losing the narrative, because CNN has to show this footage. They can't just simply ignore it. So they have to show it, and they say, well, this is just terrible. How can you possibly justify it? I mean, and we saw that the other night when Wolf Blitzer had on this Israeli spokesman. He said, we were targeting Hamas.
When you lose Wolf Blitzer on war, when you lose Wolf
my favorite
Blitzer
is Wolf Blitzer after you can see him being traumatized, and he goes, well, did you get the guy? We can't confirm. And Wolf Blitzer goes, I can't hear you, we have to go. You just broke Wolf Blitzer.
Go ahead, George.
Right, so that's it. But he said, well, yes, well, it was terrible, but we had to target this Hamas leader. But that isn't justified by any reading of international law, and even common sense would say, well, you can't just go targeting one person when you're going to kill, tens, dozens, hundreds of civilians, women and children. And ultimately, people are watching this on television, and they're watching, bloody bodies of children. Parents rushing children to hospital, and they say, well, the hospital, we simply are full. We can't take anyone in. And also, the power is going to disappear quite soon for the hospitals because of lack of fuel. Well, this is a disaster for Israel. I mean, it's like, and I think that's why the Biden administration is now talking about, well, maybe we can have a humanitarian pause And at the moment, Netanyahu was saying, "Oh no, and no pause at all." But it's becoming harder and harder for the Democrats in particular. I mean, not the Republicans. I mean, they're all gung ho. Israel uber alles. But for the Democrats, this is a little bit hard because they do have that kind of leftish, liberal, progressive group. Not huge, but it's still a significant force, and they're making their voices felt. The Rashid Tlaib, and now you have Chris Murphy, the Connecticut senator, and even Bernie Sanders, Chris Van Hollen. They're still making their voices felt. So this is becoming a big embarrassment for Biden. But Biden bungled everything by ruling out a ceasefire, which makes him,
crazy stuff going
position.
on in Congress now too, as well, because they, the House passed that standalone bill, but it wasn't standalone because they also cut at the IRS, knowing that the population of Americans are going to be like, all right, yeah, we can cut the IRS. We don't want these guys hounding us for their taxes, but they look at it as a poison pill. And Biden said he's going to veto it. Schumer said it's dead in the Senate. It's going to be interesting to see what happens as they vote for it. But listen, I can say all those people you talked about: Rashid Tlaib, the Squad, Jamal Bowman, right?
I can't believe I gave him the benefit of the doubt that he was just dumb.
They all voted against the bill. So, I mean, I tip my hat off them for doing so. Even Barbara Lee is like one of the only...
Wait, which bill? It's the bill that...
The bill that just passed the House right now.
Okay.
And it's a standalone bill to give $14.3 billion to Israel for...
Divorced from Ukraine.
No, it's separate from Ukraine. There's no Ukraine funding. But what they want to do is they want to cut $14 billion from the IRS, from the Build Back Better bill. And some of the Democrats are pointing like it's a poison pill. We're not going to go along with it. But,
I do kind of like
there
that.
are some Democrats in Florida who voted for it, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and stuff. Listen, the last thing I want to talk about Hamas real quick, because Scott Horton said on Timcast, is very interesting. I think he's been one of the greatest voices out there. And I was so happy that we were at Rage Against the War Machine, where the anti-imperialist leftists like myself joined together with the libertarians, because the libertarians have been there. When I got off the stage, Scott Horton was the first one to congratulate me. We embraced with a hug. I don't agree with everything he says, but he said this, and this is something very interesting. Hamas counted on Israel doing what they're doing right now.
Yeah, obviously.
Hamas knew they were going to bomb civilians and kill people and whatnot. There are a lot of people who say that, listen, at this point, Hamas, the Al-Qassam Brigade, the people of Gaza had nothing to lose. Their backs were so far against the wall, you couldn't punish them anymore. They were making their stand. They're digging their feet in. Is there some... does Hamas have to take some blame, knowing what's going on, some accountability, knowing the fact that what they did was going to trigger Israel to come back and pound the hell out of them, to mow the lawn and displace all these Palestinians? Is there some accountability that needs to be handed to Hamas, in your opinion?
Well, I guess there is obviously an accountability that has to be. On the other hand, it's really up to the people of Gaza. I mean, they're the ones who have to make a decision. Is the situation so desperate that is our situation so hopeless that even this is justifiable? Because let's keep in mind that previous acts of maybe self-defeating, suicidal defiance on the part of the Palestinians did serve a purpose. I mean, after all, the Intifada, the first Intifada, which seemed, it's hopeless. How can the Palestinians possibly resist Israel? Well, it did lead to Oslo. I mean, Oslo didn't work out, but at least it did lead to some kind of a movement. And it's reasonable to think that what happened on October the 7th, and then the subsequent ridiculous, over-the-top response of Israel will end up, with some kind of an improvement. I mean, the alternative was essentially, let's just forget about the Palestinians. I mean, we had Trump's Abraham Accords, and then we had Biden just simply building on that. I mean, just said, forget, this is a minor issue. Normal relations between Israel and the Saudis will be normalized, and we'll forget all the commitments that were supposed to be made about the refugees, about the two-state solution. Everything would just be forgotten. We're just all going to make some money, and the hell with these people. So you can say, the Palestinians made the move. They put themselves back on the front page, and suddenly people are talking about it. They weren't talking about it for years.
Yeah. I didn't think about it for was 17 years. Hamas taking accountability. If you're calling yourself a martyr and you're ready to blow up for it, isn't that,
But you're ready to blow yourself up. You're sacrificing all these civilians. It takes a different thought process, right? Like, you have to factor that in.
Are going to absorb the brunt of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, once you all get turned into kamikazes by virtue of,
Well, here's a question for you.
You're dead anyway. What's the point of not?
Yeah, here's a question for you, Kurt, and here's a question for you, George, and we'll use this to put a bow on this section and get over to our side piece, Zelensky. Hamas, at the end of this confrontation, at the end of this crisis, which we are both predicting that they're going to halt, they're going to stop. I know Israel doesn't have the stomach to report on so many IDF soldiers getting killed. Yep. The only other alternative is to nuke the area, and that's going to bring in Hezbollah, Iran, these other countries. They're not going to sit back. I think they understand the battlefield they're dealing with. At the end of this crisis, Hamas, are they stronger or weaker on the political end and on the military end? Go ahead, George. You go first.
I think that they're stronger. They pulled off this coup on October the 7th. Israel responded as Israel is expected to. But the response of the world showed really not a great deal of sympathy for Israel. And Hamas, who up until then we just think, oh, well, they're all a bunch of crazies. I think it'll be a different attitude. Again, Hamas, does accept, in principle, some kind of a working relationship with Israel. I mean, a sort of de facto working relationship. I mean, they don't accept it de jure, and that's the point that Israel and its apologists always go for. That somehow, well, you have to accept the legality and legitimacy of the state of Israel. Well, I don't think they have to accept that. They can accept, the state of Israel exists, and they have to live with it and accommodate it. But there's no reason why you should expect anyone to accept something that, in principle, they don't accept. I mean, they don't think that this was a legitimate legal thing that was accomplished by creating the state of Israel. I think that's a different issue. People say, well, you have to accept that. Well, I don't think accept that, but we do accept the existence of the state of Israel and to accommodate ourselves to it. And I think Hamas has been ready to do that.
Yeah, I think they set the trap, and Israel went for the cheese. Kurt?
It depends. Yeah, 100%. And it also depends with the hostages. Because Israel's even if they hate the Arabs over there, all of them, there was a big problem with Netanyahu, okay?
Yeah.
And now those people that want their relatives back, those two old ladies we covered came back and shook the guy's hand.
Yeah.
And it was like in America, oh, I can't believe they did that. They're treating those hostages well because that was their intent, was to get hostages, trade them for the prisoners Israel has. And it's a political statement. Look how nice we were to your hostages. And that's not good for Israel. That's why Israel's trying to pretend we want to get this invasion done and we won't worry about freedom right now. Because it's like these chess moves, like, oh, they're going to try to make us look bad by being nice to the hostages. Better if we just kill them all in the bombing and say they did it. Yeah. So at the end of the day, however many Israeli hostages survive, I'll bet it'll have a lot to do with because the Arabs, a lot of Arab countries are going to say, no, Hamas really pulled off a good one. But how many people that were anti-Hamas are going to, that's what I say, like all the countries that knee-jerk would support Israel. And by the way, as I always say, I am prejudiced against Palestinians and not on their side at all. And I'm blown away how crazy it is what Israel's doing to them. I don't want to even be on their side. I came into it. Yeah. As I said, if an Arab told me the crimes, I would never believe it. Yeah. Jews are telling me.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a crazy situation, man. It's going to be interesting. Listen, I think that the United States government and military, along with the Israeli government and military, has gotten to be so damn cocky that they really just got played in this one, and they got pulled into a war that they thought they got really cocky about this and thought they can just bomb their way out of it. It's not going to happen.
This Disney corporation, if instead of diversity, murder was their thing, they're into.
Yeah.
Come see us doing live shows. We're going to be in Levittown, Red Bank, New Jersey, Wilmington, Delaware, Covina, California, Burbank, California, Oxnard, California, Venice, California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Nebraska, Des Moines, Iowa, Milwaukee, and Lansing, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.